Curse of the Nile. When the princess became a pharaoh's prisoner. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The night wind drifted through the excavation camp in Luxor, carrying with it the scent of sand and ancient dust. Carol readjusted the strap of her notebook bag and stepped closer to the dark mouth of the newly opened tomb. Floodlights flickered against the carved symbols that ran along the stone doorway lines of falcons, suns, and eyes, watching her from another time. Her professor called it the tomb of the forgotten pharaoh, but Carol felt it was something more, something waiting. She was only 23, a graduate archaeology student from Boston, yet she had always believed that history was alive, just buried under the sand. As she brushed her hand over the hieroglyphs, the cold stone pulsed faintly beneath her palm. "It is just my imagination," she whispered. Still, her pulse quickened. From the shadows, one inscription caught her eye. The letters curved like a warning. "He who disturbs the rest of Anubis will awaken the river of time." A gust of wind rushed through the chamber, sharp and hot. The lights flickered once, then died. Her flashlight rolled across the floor, spinning its beam over a golden mask staring back at her. The air grew heavy. Then came the sound, a low hum that rose to a roar, like the desert itself was breathing. Sand lifted in a spiral. Carol stumbled back, shouting for her team, but her voice vanished into the storm. The earth split beneath her feet. The last thing she saw was the flash of her silver bracelet, the one her mother had given her, a simple band engraved with the eye of Horus. Then, everything went white. When Carol opened her eyes, the air smelled of incense, not gasoline and dust. Above her stretched a ceiling painted with stars and falcons, lit by torches that hissed softly. Her heart hammered. Around her stood men in linen skirts and gold collars, their dark eyes wide with alarm. "Who dares disturb the throne of Memphis?" a voice boomed. She turned. On a raised platform stood a young man dressed in white and gold, his gaze sharp as the edge of a blade. The sun through the tall windows cut across his face, beautiful, proud, and unmistakably royal. "I am Carol," she stammered. "Where am I?" The guards gripped their spears tighter. The man descended the steps slowly, the crowd bowing as he passed. "You speak in tongues of the gods," he said. "Are you witch or spirit?" "I am not a witch," Carol cried. "I am a researcher. I do not know how I got here." Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to stand straight. The man studied her, circling like a lion assessing prey. Then his eyes fell on the bracelet shining on her wrist. The murmurs around the room turned to gasps. One priest fell to his knees, whispering in ancient Egyptian. The young ruler's expression changed from suspicion to something closer to wonder and fear. "The mark of Horus," he said slowly. "No mortal wears that symbol unless chosen by the gods." Before Carol could speak again, two guards seized her arms. The young Pharaoh Memphis lifted his hand. "Take her to the temple. Until I know who she is," he said. "She is a prisoner of the throne." "Yento." As they dragged her through the golden halls, Carol looked down at her bracelet glowing faintly in the firelight. Her breath caught. She had wanted to discover the secrets of ancient Egypt. Now she had become one of them. The torches flickered as Carol was led down the narrow stone corridor, her footsteps echoing off the cold walls. The air was thick with incense and fear. Every step she took reminded her she was not in any museum, not in any simulation. This was real. The guards stopped before a massive bronze door etched with the image of a jackal-headed god. One of them struck his staff to the ground, and the door groaned open. Inside was a chamber lit by dozens of oil lamps, their flames bending under a faint draft. The scent of burning myrrh clung to the air. In the center stood a marble basin filled with still water, reflecting the stars painted on the ceiling. The guards released her roughly, and the heavy door slammed shut behind them. Carol stumbled forward, clutching her bracelet. "Think, Carol," she whispered. "Stay calm. Observe." That was what her professor always said. But this was not a dig site. There was no exit sign, no security camera, only silence, and the echo of her own heartbeat. She knelt beside the basin and peered into it. Her reflection shimmered oddly, as if time itself bent around her. Behind her, the shadows shifted. A soft voice spoke in Egyptian, then in broken English. "You are awake." "Loka." Carol turned sharply. A young woman stood near the doorway, her eyes lined with kohl, her posture regal even in servant's clothes. "Who are you?" Carol asked. "I am Nephra," the woman replied carefully. "I serve the high priest. He says the Pharaoh will return at dawn to speak with you." Carol swallowed hard. "The Pharaoh Memphis?" Nephra nodded. "Yes. He believes you were sent by Horus himself." Her tone was cautious, almost reverent. "He thinks you carry a sign." Carol lifted her wrist. The bracelet gleamed faintly again. "This? It is just a gift. From my mother." Nephra's eyes widened. "Then your mother must be divine." Carol wanted to laugh, but the words stuck in her throat. "No," she said softly. "She was just human." The servant hesitated, then placed a small bowl of fruit beside her. "Eat. You will need strength when the Pharaoh questions you. If you anger him, no god will protect you." Arden. When the door closed again, Carol sat in the golden light, feeling the weight of her situation. Her mind raced. How had she come here? The flash of light, the collapse, the sense of falling. Maybe it was a hallucination, maybe a coma, but the pain in her scraped palms was too real. Hours later, the door opened again. 2 guards entered, their faces impassive. Between them, the Pharaoh walked in his white robes trailing, his gaze steady. Carol rose instinctively. He studied her in silence before speaking. "You claim to come from no kingdom. Your words are strange, your dress foreign. Yet you wear the mark of Horus. Tell me, what power do you hold?" "I have no power," Carol said firmly. "I am a student of history. I study your world. Egypt." The priests murmured among themselves, confused by her phrasing. Memphis raised his hand, silencing them. "You speak as if you stand outside time," he said. "Do you come from the future?" Her breath caught. The question hung heavy in the air. She had no answer he would believe. "I come from a far place," she said carefully, "but I mean no harm." Memphis stepped closer. His expression was unreadable. "If you lie, you die. If you tell truth, the gods will show me. Until then, you remain under my protection and my watch." He turned to leave, but paused. "You saved me once," he added quietly, "when you warned the guard about the falling stone. I saw you push him away before it struck." That was not luck. Carol frowned, realizing what he meant. When the temple trembled earlier, she had reacted instinctively, pulling a man to safety. Memphis had noticed. "I just did what anyone would do," she said. He gave a small smile, the first hint of warmth in his eyes. "Not everyone does." Then he motioned for the guards to stay outside and walked away. When the door shut, Carol exhaled shakily. She sank to her knees, her heart pounding. Somehow, she had become both a prisoner and a guest. Outside, dawn crept across the desert. The first light spilled through the temple windows, glinting off the eye of Horus on her bracelet. Carol lifted it to her chest and whispered, "Mom, I wish you could see this. I wish you could tell me how to survive it." The wind outside shifted, carrying faint chants from the city below. Somewhere, in the vast silence of the palace, destiny had begun to move. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the carved stone lattice, painting lines of gold across the temple floor. Carol had barely slept. Every sound, the rustle of linen, the chant of priests beyond the walls reminded her that she was still trapped in a time that should not exist. She stood by the open archway, looking toward the distant river that shimmered like a ribbon of glass. People moved along its banks, carrying baskets of grain, leading oxen, their lives unfolding in a rhythm older than memory. It was breathtaking and terrifying at once. Nephra returned, carrying a folded dress of white linen. "The Pharaoh commands you to attend him at the Hall of Offerings," she said softly. "He wishes to test the truth of your words." Carol accepted the dress, her fingers brushing the fine fabric. "How am I supposed to survive his tests if I cannot even understand their laws?" Nephra hesitated. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Bow your head, but do not lower your eyes too long. He believes the gods speak through the brave." Moments later, guards escorted her through winding corridors lined with paintings of gods and stars. The air smelled of lotus and heat. When they entered the grand hall, the brightness of it nearly blinded her. Sunlight poured through high windows, striking the golden throne where Memphis sat, his eyes calm and unreadable. Carol's heart pounded. He was younger than she expected up close, no more than 20, but there was something timeless about him, like the statues carved in his image. "You are the woman who fell from the heavens," he said. "Show me your knowledge, if you speak truth." Priests brought forward a parchment covered in faded hieroglyphs. They asked her to read it. Carol stared at the symbols. Her mind flicked through years of study, the long hours in the archaeology lab. Slowly, she began to decipher them, speaking each word carefully. It says, she began, that Horus rose above his enemies not with anger, but with light. The hall fell silent. Memphis leaned forward slightly. You understand our sacred tongue? Only a little, Carol replied honestly. It is part of my research where I come from. Her words puzzled him. You speak of another world again. She took a cautious breath. A world that remembers yours. A world where you are history. Murmurs spread through the priests. Some bowed their heads, whispering that she was a prophet. Others hissed that she was cursed. Memphis raised his hand, silencing them all. I will decide who she is, he said firmly. He rose from the throne and descended the steps, stopping before her. You say my name is remembered? Tell me, Carol of the future, what fate awaits Memphis of Egypt? Carol froze. She could still recall the inscriptions she had studied in her own time. Memphis, one of the youngest pharaohs, murdered in a palace uprising, his tomb lost to the desert. The thought chilled her. She met his eyes. History remembers you as a great ruler, she said softly, a builder of peace. He studied her face, sensing the weight behind her words. You lie to protect me. Tamo. I am protecting the truth from becoming its own curse, she replied. For a moment, his expression softened. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed a low, genuine sound that echoed through the hall. You are bold, he said. No one dares speak to me so directly. The tension in the room eased. Perhaps you truly are a messenger, Memphis said. You will remain in my palace under my guard. You will learn our tongue fully, and you will teach me yours. Together we will seek the truth behind your arrival. Carol exhaled in relief. Thank you, he turned, half smiling. Do not thank me yet, foreigner. In Egypt, even gratitude carries a price. That night, Carol was moved from the temple cell to a chamber overlooking the river. The walls glowed with murals of blue and gold. From her balcony, she could see the stars mirrored in the Nile's current. She touched her bracelet, tracing the eye of Horus engraved in its center. For the first time since falling into this world, she felt something beyond curiosity, maybe even awe. Below, the city hummed with distant drums. Somewhere among those sounds, the young pharaoh was also awake, staring out from his palace window, wondering who this strange woman was and why the gods had brought her to him. Neither of them knew that their meeting, born from a single mistake, was already changing the course of history. Days passed in a rhythm that felt unreal, as if Carol had been caught between two heartbeats of time. Every morning she was escorted through sunlit courtyards to the library of the palace, a vast chamber lined with papyrus scrolls and painted columns. The air smelled of ink and warm clay. Memphis kept his word. He allowed her to study, but never without his watchful eyes nearby. He often came to her lessons, sometimes to question her, sometimes only to observe. At first, Carol could barely meet his gaze. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to sense the quiet humanity behind the gold and power. One afternoon, as the heat shimmered beyond the pillars, Memphis entered silently and stood beside her table. You read faster than my scholars, he said, his tone neither harsh nor kind, just curious. I had good teachers, Carol replied, tracing her finger along the faded ink of a scroll. Where I come from, we spend our lives studying the words of your people. He leaned slightly closer. Then perhaps it is fate that you came here. You carry our knowledge forward through time. She looked up, startled by his sincerity. Maybe. But knowledge is dangerous when people use it for power. Memphis smiled faintly. You speak as if power is a curse. Here, it is survival. Carol hesitated. And what about mercy? His expression darkened for a heartbeat. Mercy is a luxury kings cannot afford. They fell into silence. The faint sound of birds outside filled the pause. Then, as if to escape the heaviness of his own words, Memphis picked up one of her sketches, a map of the Nile Delta she had drawn from memory. You draw the river differently, he observed. It bends where ours does not. That is because the river changed, she explained. Floods, droughts, even the shifting of sand. Centuries from now, the Nile will flow in a new path. Memphis studied the lines. You see the future as if it already exists. That is power greater than mine. It is not power, Carol said softly. It is just perspective. He placed the drawing down carefully. Perhaps that is what I need, another perspective. Later that evening, Memphis invited her to walk through the palace gardens. The sun was setting, washing the stones in copper light. Servants bowed as they passed, whispering the name they had begun to call her the daughter of the river. Carol tried to ignore it, though it sent a strange ache through her chest. They think I am something I am not, she said. People need symbols more than truth, Memphis replied. You gave them hope after the flood warnings. The plans you drew saved villages. That is enough. She turned to him. You actually built the barriers? He nodded. Your idea worked. The water receded before it reached the lower city. For the first time, Carol smiled. Then I guess my curse did something right. Memphis looked at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Maybe the gods do not curse us, he said quietly. Maybe they test us with strange gifts. They stopped at the edge of the garden where the river caught the last light of the day. A warm wind stirred the palm leaves. Carol's pulse quickened. She wanted to ask him if he truly believed she was sent by the gods, but something in his expression silenced her. Instead, Memphis said, When I was a boy, I dreamed the Nile would speak to me, that it would tell me my fate. Then you appeared, wearing its mark on your wrist. Carol looked down at her bracelet, glowing faintly in the dusk. Maybe the Nile has a strange way of speaking, she murmured. He smiled, and for a moment the distance between them, time, power, destiny, seemed to dissolve. When they returned to the palace, Nephra met Carol at the entrance, her face pale. You must be careful, she whispered. The queen's sister, Isis, has heard the people praise your name. She calls you an omen that will destroy the pharaoh's throne. Carol froze, her earlier peace shattering. What will she do? Nephra lowered her eyes. What every threatened ruler does, she will strike first. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the horizon, though the sky remained clear. The Nile glimmered under the moonlight like a blade waiting to fall. Somewhere deep inside the palace, fate was already shifting again. That night, the palace slept under a sky full of copper stars, but Carol could not close her eyes. Nephra's warning echoed in her mind like the hiss of the desert wind. Isis, the pharaoh's half-sister, was known throughout Egypt as beautiful and ruthless. If she truly believed Carol was a threat to the throne, there would be no safety anywhere in the kingdom. From her balcony, Carol looked down at the dark gardens. Guards moved like shadows along the walls. Somewhere beyond the courtyards, she heard the distant chanting of priests. Every sound carried weight, like the world itself was watching her. When dawn came, she was summoned to the council chamber. The marble floor gleamed under the morning light, and at the far end of the hall stood Isis, draped in silk the color of blood. Her smile was sharp. Memphis sat beside her, expression unreadable. So, Isis began softly, this is the woman the people call the daughter of the river. She circled Carol slowly, her gold bracelets clinking. A stranger who claims to know our language, our gods, and our future. Tell me, foreigner, what is your true intention here? Carol's heart thudded. I mean no harm. I only wish to return home. Isis tilted her head. Home? Then perhaps you will tell us which kingdom dares send spies into the palace of Egypt. Memphis rose abruptly. Enough, Isis. She is under my protection. His sister's eyes flashed with fury. Protection? You endanger us all. Do you not see how the people whisper her name more than yours? They bow to her when they should bow to you. The tension in the room thickened. Carol could feel every gaze burning against her skin. She wanted to speak, but Memphis raised his hand. Leave us, he said to the court. When the room emptied, he turned to his sister. You will not touch her. Then you are blind, Isis hissed. That woman will be your downfall. She swept out of the chamber, her perfume lingering like smoke. When she was gone, Memphis exhaled slowly and looked at Carol. You see what you have done, he said quietly. Your presence divides my court. Yossi. I did not ask for any of this, Carol said, her voice shaking. I saved lives, that is all. He looked away, guilt flickering across his face. And yet, because of that kindness, enemies now move in the dark. Later that day, Carol sat alone in the library, tracing her fingers along the edge of a scroll. She had begun to feel the weight of her place in this world too visible to be safe, too foreign to belong. Nephra entered quietly, carrying a sealed clay har. I overheard the soldiers, she whispered. Isis has sent word to the army at Thebes. They will act soon. Carol's breath caught. What do you mean? They will force Memphis to surrender power or watch you die. That evening, as the sun sank behind the river, Memphis came to her chamber. His face was tense, his voice low. You must leave the palace tonight. I will arrange a boat to take you downriver. Carol shook her head. I cannot run. This started because of me. I will not hide while you face your sister alone. Memphis stepped closer. You do not understand. She will not stop until she spills blood, yours or mine. I will not let her have either. He reached for her wrist, his fingers brushing the bracelet of Horus. The metal glowed faintly, catching the firelight. When I see this mark, I wonder if the gods chose you to test my faith, he said. Carol met his eyes. Maybe they chose us both. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the river lapped softly against the stone walls. Finally, Memphis released her hand. At dawn, go to the eastern gate. Nephra will guide you. Do not look back. She wanted to protest, but the heaviness in his voice stopped her. And what about you? She asked. Memphis smiled faintly, though sorrow darkened his eyes. A king cannot flee his own kingdom. When he left, Carol stood at the balcony, tears burning behind her eyes. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of lotus from the gardens below. She whispered to the night, "If this is fate, then let it be kind." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled again, low and distant, like the growl of a storm waiting for its hour. The sands of Egypt were shifting, and soon, neither Carol nor Memphis would be able to escape what the gods had written. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert, turning the palace walls into sheets of gold. Carol stood near the eastern gate, her cloak drawn tight around her shoulders. The cool air stung her skin, but inside she burned with fear and guilt. Memphis had ordered her to leave, yet every part of her wanted to stay. She did not belong in this time, but somehow, this world had begun to feel like home. Nephra appeared from the shadows, her face hidden under a veil. "The boat is ready," she whispered. "It will take you to the trading port before noon. From there, the priest who owes Memphis will hide you among his caravan." Carol hesitated. "And Memphis? What will happen to him?" Nephra's eyes flickered with worry. "He will face his sister alone. The army at Thebes has already begun to move. If he surrenders, Isis will spare him. But if he resists—" The rest of her sentence vanished under the sound of approaching hooves. The gates burst open. A soldier galloped through, shouting, "The queen's sister has taken the council! She has declared herself regent. The Pharaoh is to be seized." Nephra's hand clutched Carol's arm. "You must go now." Before Carol could move, the sky cracked with the sound of war horns. She could see smoke rising beyond the palace walls. The quiet kingdom had erupted into chaos. Guards ran past them, shouting orders, the smell of fire and dust filling the air. Carol's instincts took over. "We have to warn him," she said. "Are you mad?" Nephra cried. "You will be killed." "Dofor." "I cannot leave him," Carol said firmly. "He risked everything for me." Without waiting, she turned and ran toward the inner courtyard. The halls were crowded with servants fleeing and soldiers preparing for battle. The golden banners of the Pharaoh had been torn down and replaced with the crimson flags of Isis. When she reached the throne chamber, 2 guards blocked her way. "The Pharaoh is under arrest," one barked. "No one may enter." "Kudding." But at that moment, Memphis's voice echoed from inside. "Let her through." The guard stepped aside reluctantly. Carol entered, breathless. Memphis stood near the throne, his crown set aside, his sword drawn. Behind him, the great windows blazed with firelight from the burning city beyond. "You should have gone," he said without turning. "I will not leave you," Carol replied. "You saved my life more than once. Let me save yours now." "Kamatode." He faced her, his expression torn between anger and gratitude. "If you stay, Isis will use you against me. She already blames you for dividing the people." "I do not care what she blames," Carol said, stepping closer. "You once said mercy is a luxury kings cannot afford. Then let me be your luxury, just this once." Memphis stared at her for a long moment, his jaw tightening. "You speak like no one I have ever known," he murmured. "You bring madness and courage in the same breath." Lo! The doors crashed open. Isis swept in, surrounded by armed guards. Her voice was cold as the blade she carried. "So this is the foreign witch who has bewitched our king." "Enough, Isis," Memphis said, raising his sword. "If you come closer, you will cross a line even the gods will not forgive." Isis laughed, her gold crown glinting. "The gods have already chosen, brother. They sent her here to destroy you, and I am merely their hand." She gestured sharply. The guards advanced. Memphis moved to block them, but Carol stepped forward, holding up her wrist. The light from her bracelet burst brighter than ever, filling the room with a golden flare. Everyone froze. The glow pulsed once, twice, then dimmed. In the stunned silence, Memphis looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "The mark of Horus," he whispered. "It reacts to you." Isis's eyes narrowed. "Or she has cursed us all." Before anyone could speak again, another explosion shook the palace. Dust rained from the ceiling. A messenger stumbled in, shouting, "The outer wall has fallen, the army is inside." Memphis turned to Carol. "Go with Nephra, find the priest. I will end this." Carol reached for him. "If you fight her, you will die." He smiled faintly. "Then I will die as a pharaoh, not as her prisoner." Their hands brushed, brief, desperate, final. Then he turned toward the doors, his figure framed in fire and light. As Carol was pulled away by Nephra, the roar of battle filled the air. The last thing she saw was Memphis standing tall against the storm, the golden mark of the gods gleaming across his chest. The palace burned like a dying Sunday smoke rose from the great halls, turning the morning sky into a curtain of ash. Carol stumbled through the narrow corridor, her hands pressed against the rough stone walls as Nephra pulled her along. Behind them, the clash of swords echoed like thunder. "Keep moving," Nephra urged. "The priest's passage is near the temple garden." Carol's lungs burned from the smoke. "We cannot just leave him." Nephra stopped, gripping her shoulders. "If you return, you will only die beside him. Is that what you want?" Carol hesitated. She could still hear Memphis's voice, calm and resolute, as he faced his sister's army. Her heart screamed to turn back, but reason whispered that he would not want her sacrifice. They reached a small door hidden behind a tapestry. Nephra pushed it open, revealing a tunnel that led toward the river. The air was cooler there, the sounds of war muffled by earth. As they ran, Carol caught a glimpse of the city through a crack in the wall, the markets in flames, the people scattering like shadows under the storm of arrows. When they reached the exit, the temple's bells rang out, slow and mournful. It was the sound of defeat. Nephra froze. "The signal," she whispered. "It means the pharaoh has fallen." Carol's knees went weak. No, it cannot be. But the truth was written in the silence that followed. The shouts had faded, replaced by the crackle of fire and the distant cries of mourning. Nephra took her hand. "We must go before the soldiers reach the docks." Carol let herself be led to the small boat waiting by the reeds. As they drifted onto the river, she looked back at the palace. The flames reflected on the water like molten gold, swallowing the place that had once felt like another world. Tears blurred her vision. "He believed the gods sent me for a reason," she whispered, "but I brought him only ruin." Nephra shook her head. "Do not say that. You gave him something no war ever could hope, and hope does not die with kings." The current carried them downstream, past the temples and fields. Carol held her bracelet tightly, feeling the faint warmth still pulsing from it. The same light that had once saved her now felt like a burden too heavy to bear. Hours later, when they reached the outskirts of the city, Nephra guided her into a cave hidden among the cliffs. "You will be safe here until nightfall," she said. "Then we will find another way." Carol sat by the entrance, watching the smoke rise higher in the distance. Her heart was heavy, but deep inside, a quiet certainty began to grow. She could not leave this world, not yet. If Memphis still lived, she would find him. And if he had fallen, she would make sure his story was never buried by the sand. As the sun set over the Nile, its crimson light washed across her face. The river moved slowly, carrying the ashes of a kingdom toward the sea. Carol closed her eyes and whispered a promise to the wind. "This is not the end. I will bring justice for him and for Egypt." The night over the Nile was heavy and silent, broken only by the low hum of insects and the whisper of waves against the rocks. Carol sat near the mouth of the cave, staring at the flicker of torchlight far away where the palace once stood. The smoke had thinned, but the grief in her chest had not. Nephra returned from the riverbank carrying a small bundle of food. "The soldiers are still searching every boat," she said quietly. "We cannot travel tonight, but there are whispers among the people. Some say the pharaoh still lives." Carol's head snapped up. "What did you hear?" "They say he was struck down in the hall but did not die. The priests carried him to the temple of Anubis, where Isis dares not enter." Hope flooded through Carol so suddenly that it hurt. "Then he is alive," she breathed. "I have to go to him." Nephra grabbed her arm. "You will never make it across the city. Isis has placed guards on every street." Carol looked down at the bracelet on her wrist, its faint golden light pulsing as if it heard her thoughts. "Maybe this is why I was sent here," she said. "Not to flee, but to save him." Before Nephra could protest, Carol stood. If the gods truly marked me, then they will guide me now. By dawn, cloaked in linen and dust, they made their way back toward the city through narrow paths along the cliffs. Smoke still curled from the ruins, and the once lively streets were ghostly quiet. They hid among the shadows until they reached the steps of the temple. The doors of the sanctuary stood half open. Inside, the air was thick with incense and candlelight. Carol's heart pounded as she stepped across the threshold. There, on the altar draped with gold cloth, lay Memphis pale, motionless, his chest wrapped in blood-stained linen. She rushed to his side. "Memphis," she whispered, her hands trembling. "Please, open your eyes." The high priest who watched over him turned, startled. "You should not be here. The Pharaoh's life hangs by a thread." "Then let me help," Carol said. "I know something of healing. I can stop the bleeding." The priest hesitated, torn between faith and fear, but when he saw the glowing bracelet, he stepped aside. "If the gods sent you, then let their will be done." "Nile." Carol worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water from the sacred basin, pressing linen against the torn flesh. "Stay with me," she murmured. "You promised you would not let her win." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Memphis's hand twitched beneath hers. His lips parted, barely forming words. "Carol," tears spilled down her cheeks. "I am here. You are safe." His eyes fluttered open, dark and dazed. "I thought I dreamed you," he whispered weakly. "You are not dreaming," she said. "You are alive, and we still have a chance." The priest bowed deeply. "It is a miracle. The daughter of the river has restored life." Carol looked at Memphis, her heart trembling with relief and fear. "Rest now," she whispered, "because tomorrow we take back your throne." Outside, the first light of morning touched the Nile, turning the water to gold. For the first time since the chaos began, Carol felt something stronger than fear. It was resolve burning, bright, and unshakable. The sun rose red over the horizon, spreading light across the river and the ruins. Inside the temple of Anubis, the flames of the torches burned low, casting long shadows over the stone walls. Memphis sat upright now, his strength returning, though his face was pale. Carol stood beside him, her hand still resting on the edge of the altar. "The people will not follow Isis forever," Nephra said quietly. "They are frightened, but they remember who saved them during the floods." Memphis turned his gaze toward the doorway, where the light spilled into the hall. "If I walk into the city today, I will not return as a warrior. I will return as a man who stood against lies. Let them decide if I am still their pharaoh." Carol looked at him, her heart caught between pride and fear. "They will see the truth," she said softly. "They always do." Before he could respond, the temple bells rang. The city was stirring again. Priests and guards emerged from the shadows to kneel before him. One of them held out a golden crown, dented and darkened by fire. "Egypt still needs its son," the priest said. Memphis accepted it but did not place it on his head. Instead, he looked at Carol. "Walk with me," he said. Together they stepped out into the streets. The people who had once fled now stopped and stared. They saw their pharaoh alive, standing tall with the strange foreign woman at his side. Whispers turned to cheers, and soon the entire square filled with voices calling his name. Isis appeared at the top of the palace steps, her robes torn, her crown askew. Rage twisted her face. "You should be dead," she spat. "Perhaps the gods changed their minds," Memphis replied calmly. When she drew her blade, the guards around her hesitated. No one moved to aid her. The crowd began to chant, louder and louder, "Pharaoh, Pharaoh," until the sound drowned everything else. Isis dropped her sword, her power dissolving with the noise. Memphis spoke to her, not as an enemy but as family. "You wanted to protect Egypt from fear," he said. "But you forgot that faith, not control, is what keeps a kingdom alive." Isis bowed her head, defeated. "Then rule your kingdom, brother. But know that it will cost you everything." "Ukiba." Memphis turned away, his eyes soft but resolute. "Everything except my soul." That night, the city celebrated beneath a sky bright with stars. The fires were gone, replaced by lanterns floating along the river. Carol stood beside the water, her reflection shimmering with the light. Memphis joined her, the faint glow of the bracelet reflecting in his eyes. "I do not know how long I have here," she said quietly. "The curse that brought me might still take me back." He reached for her hand. "Then let us not waste what time the gods give." The wind carried the scent of the Nile as he slipped a simple golden band beside her bracelet. "Whatever world you return to," he said, Remember this one once held your name. Carol's eyes filled with tears. And I will carry you in mine. As dawn broke, the river shimmered once more. The mark of Horus on her bracelet flashed with brilliant light. In that glow, she felt the pull of time again, a soft tug, like the tide returning home. Memphis's hand tightened briefly around hers before the world faded into white. When the light cleared, Carol stood again in the ruins of the tomb, her clothes dusty, the air silent except for the hum of the desert wind. She looked down at her wrist, the bracelet still there, but beside it gleamed the golden band. A single tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered, "Best mistake I ever made. Chew." And as the sun rose over the sands of Egypt, the river glowed like gold alive with the memory of a love that had crossed time itself.